There you are. Come on in. Sit down and have a chat with Granny. Hello, thank you for joining me. I am Godless Granny, and I am so delighted to have you here watching and that you felt that this was worthy of a little bit of your time. I am capturing this video on my iPhone, and I am hoping to do future content as well. I'm planning to do regular videos if I can. It'll depend a little bit on the popularity. If I get 250 views, I will buy a new camera and try to improve the quality. So if you enjoy the content here, please tell your friends, and let's see if we can get the number of viewers up and maybe even a few people to subscribe. And I'm planning to bring more atheist content. What kind of content? Over my 42 years as a Christian, I have served in many positions in the church. I have sung in the choir. I have shared my faith on college campuses, in shopping malls, on public transportation. I have gone out on church visitation when we were members of a Southern Baptist church. I have been involved in music. I've been in choir. I've performed with Living Christmas Tree. I have done home Bible studies. I have taught VBS. I've taught Sunday school and every age of Sunday school that there is. I have been a missionary. I've been on 3 foreign short-term mission projects. I have been financial chairman of a church. I am one of the founding members of a church. I was a church librarian. I started a church library from scratch, built it from nothing, and was the librarian at that church for 7 years. So how, with all of this background and having Christianity having been my entire life for 42 years, did I just walk away from it all? My faith started to have some chinks in it shortly after the election of President Trump. It suddenly became popular to be a bigot, to be a racist. And even among mainstream Christians who wouldn't directly come out with such thoughts, you could hear a lot of animosity and sometimes downright hatred coming out of people that I thought were supposed to be loving people, and it just didn't quite add up. Particularly, I had a pastor that was saying that in one breath that he didn't think it was necessary to be politically correct. He was complaining about being politically correct. But in my thinking, Christians should be the first people wanting to line up to find out what the correct political term is, the politically correct term is, that will allow you to share your faith with someone without being culturally offensive. I mean, this is something we certainly train missionaries to do, is to try to speak to people and be respectful of the culture that they're going into. Why would we not do the same thing here? And we talk about in our Bible about sharing and giving to others and sacrificial giving, and yet we're saying that we won't allow Mexicans into our country because they're going to steal our jobs and we're not going to have as good an economy. And why aren't we willing to share? Those were just little chinks. At that point, I just kind of distanced myself from those people and said, all right, that's what they believe, but that's not my version of Christianity. The first thing that really shook my faith and caused me to start thinking more skeptically about what I believe was when my brother posted an open letter to Dr. Laura, which has been seen by many people. It's quite humorous, but it also really got me to thinking. And let me read it. It was a letter that was written in response to Dr. Laura's stance that, as an Orthodox Jew, she found homosexuality to be an abomination. And this was this person's response. Dear Dr. Laura, thank you so much for educating people regarding God's law. I have learned a great deal from your show and try to share that knowledge with as many people as I can. When someone tries to defend the homosexual lifestyle, for example, I simply remind them that Leviticus 18:22 clearly states it to be an abomination. End of debate. I do need some advice from you, however, regarding some other elements of God's law and how to follow them. First, when I burn a bull on the altar of sacrifice, I know it creates a pleasing odor for the Lord. The problem is my neighbors. They claim the odor is not pleasing to them. Should I smite them? Second, I would like to sell my daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. In this day and age, what do you think would be a fair price for her? I know that I am allowed no contact with a woman when she is on her menstrual period of uncleanness. How do I tell? I've tried asking, but most women take offense. Leviticus 25:44 states that I may indeed possess slaves, both male and female, provided they are not purchased from neighboring nations. A friend of mine claims that applies to Mexicans, but not Canadians. Can you please clarify? Can I own Canadians? I also have a neighbor who insists on working on the Sabbath. The passage in Exodus 35:2 clearly states that he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself? A friend of mine feels as though eating shellfish is an abomination, according to Leviticus 11:10. But is it a lesser abomination than homosexuality? I don't agree. Can you settle this? Are there degrees of abomination? Leviticus 21:20 states that I may not approach the altar of God if I have a defect in my sight. I have to admit, I wear reading glasses, as does Granny. Does my vision have to be 20/20, or is there some wiggle room here? Most of my male friends get their hair trimmed, including the hair around their temples, even though it is expressly forbidden in Leviticus 19:27. How should they die? I know from Leviticus 11:6-8 that touching the skin of a dead pig makes me unclean, but may I still play football if I wear gloves? This got me to thinking skeptically about my own faith. Some of the things that I believed didn't really fit with the reality of our day and age. And the next thing that then happened that gave me kind of a chink in my faithful armor was my daughter came home from school and said that she, as a senior in high school, had done a paper on Noah's Ark. She went to a Christian school. And after doing this paper for English class, she came to the conclusion that there was no worldwide flood. And that it isn't possible to fill an ark with 2 of every animal and have 8 people take care of those animals for a year and not die of exhaustion. And even fitting the animals on the boat is a problem. And she said the methane gas that would be put out from these animals would have killed them all. Especially when you read the description of how the boat was built. It had 1 door and 1 window. The door had to be sealed shut to keep the water out. The only ventilation was through the 1 window. They would have all died. And so I kind of wondered, is that right? And I looked it up on the internet, and she was right. And so then I was kind of turned a little bit more. And my daughter asked me to watch some videos with her, and the first thing she showed me was somebody named Viced Rhino. She really enjoys his humor. And I enjoyed watching Viced Rhino a little bit, but I could only understand about half of what he was saying. The last time I took a science class was in 1979, and a lot of the things he was talking about have been discovered since then, and I realized my science education was sorely lacking. And a lot of the foundation of what I believed about evolution not being real, there was micro, not macro evolution, was based on things that I had been taught, based on evidence that had been gathered more than 50 years ago. And my education needed a little bit of update. And the next thing my daughter showed me was an ARC protest video. In this video, Aaron Ra was speaking, and he was in front of a poster, or I should say a banner, that said, incest and genocide park. Now, I don't remember what Aaron Ra was saying. I could only understand about maybe 25% of it. But the banner, at first when I saw it, I was offended. How dare they say such awful things? But then I started thinking about it more critically and realized, yeah, that's what the story of Noah's Ark really is all about. I mean, it was a genocide event that killed everyone except these 8 people, only one of which was considered righteous, which is a little confusing. And then to repopulate the world, we had this huge incest. And we had to have the same thing occurring in the animal kingdom in order to repopulate all of the animal kingdom. And so the whole story became really difficult to believe anymore. So now I've always been taught that the Bible is the complete and infallible Word of God. And so, even though the Noah's Ark story is only one very small part of the Bible, if it's not true, which it isn't, then it's not the complete infallible Word of God. And if all of Christianity stands on the Bible and that the Bible is true, without the Bible, there's just nothing for Christianity to stand on. And that's the point at which I walked away from my faith. And at that point, I started watching a lot more videos and was trying to fill in some gaps in my education and trying to understand a different viewpoint. And the first person I turned to was Apologia. Because, as I said, my lack of understanding of science left it very difficult for me to understand some of them, but Apologia I could understand. And he had some very good arguments. And he pointed out a lot of things in the Bible that I just had not even noticed before, even though I'd read them so many times. And once I started understanding the base from Apologia, then I could build up to Viced Rhino. And once I started understanding Viced Rhino, happy circumstance, I happened to be taking my daughter to Dragon Con this year. And my daughter wanting to show me that I could actually enjoy Dragon Con, which I did not expect to do. I didn't think there would be really anything for someone my age. But she told me there was a skeptics track and there was somebody named Matt Dillahunty doing a live show called The Atheist Experience. And I've always been someone that's been early to everything. So my daughter and I showed up about 15 minutes early, and we were the only ones there. We got first choice of seats. We sat right next to the microphone. And I said, I'm going to ask a question. My daughter said, I'd love to ask a question, but I don't know what to ask. What are you going to ask, Mom? And I wrote down my question on a piece of paper and I showed it to her. And she said, Mom, that's a great question. So as soon as Matt opened it up for questions, I was too shy to be first. But as soon as somebody else jumped to the microphone, I jumped and I was second. And I said to Matt Dillahunty, I've been an atheist for a few weeks now. And I'm finding that my science understanding is really lacking. Can you recommend some books for me to read to catch up? And he did. And so I've been watching videos and I've read a few books and I'm catching up, but I still would not consider myself an expert or even well versed by any stretch of the imagination. But at least now I'm watching Aaron Ra's videos and I understand what I'm hearing, at least most of it. And so that's how I've come to be where I am. So now, how did I go from being just an atheist to Godless Granny? Well, my friend, John Gleason, who's also known as Godless Engineer, got together with me and I was telling him about my experience and his motto is, stand up. And I thought, I really do have something to say. And as I've been putting out some information on Twitter and talking to people on Twitter, I've realized that I really do have a perspective that's a little bit different than some other people's. And so I decided that I would like to join in the conversation and share what I have to say. I would welcome a debate with anyone who would like to debate. I welcome the opportunity of bringing other people into my channel on a show or being a guest on someone else's show as well. How I became Godless Granny, I've always liked alliteration, and I wanted to bring into the name something to let people know that I was an older person. And so that gave me the idea of Godless Granny, although I was a little bit shy at saying, Godless Engineer, do you think I'm kind of copying you? And he said, no, go for it. And that's how I came to be Godless Granny. And I also want to thank John for the help and advice that he's been giving me in how to start a YouTube channel and how to get started with all of this. And so I think I do have something to share in the future. And the main thing that I plan to share with people is that I spent 42 years of my life dedicating my time and my energy to a God that didn't exist. And now that I am free of that, I'm ready to start living. And I want to encourage other people that, if you are happy as a Christian, you do what you want to do, you believe what you want to believe. But you only get one life. And so you need to live that life in a way that is the most fulfilling for you and not for someone that you're thinking might be there that really isn't. And so my words to you are, live your life.